King Louis XIV became king at the age of 23, reigning king at the age of 23. He referred to himself as the Sun King, as we are aware, because he saw himself as the life giver of his subjects and the center of France. His light, like the sun, touches everything in the day, and he wanted an impact on all of his subjects every single day, and his nobles. So we're going to talk about how he established one king and made sure that everyone knew their place in his court. So he would sell titles to nobles, basically creating a hierarchy of nobles who were distracted by competition to help him with his daily tasks, as it was a big deal. And it became a competition of who would become the king's favorite, though they had no say in government. These selling of titles made King Louis very wealthy, and because of this money, he never had to call the Estates General, which was the representative body that gave consent to taxation. He basically deemed it unnecessary, as it would not meet for 175 years following his reign. And further, he made one law by creating the Code of Louis, which were standardized laws for all of France to unify the nation. He basically unified all of them and made sure there was no South France, North France, East France, so on and so forth, making it just one nation, basically under his code, which would help Napoleon in the years to come. Further, he made one faith by establishing the Edict of Fontainebleau. So his grandfather Henry IV's Edict of Nantes in 1598 gave the Huguenots tolerance to practice in differing places throughout France. However, Louis was a devout Catholic, and he revokes the Edict of Nantes and establishes his edict, making Catholicism the only faith that was allowed to be practiced in France. So his Edict of Fontainebleau in 1685 made Catholicism the only faith, and he is claimed to have said, "We have determined that we can do nothing better in order to wholly obliterate the memory of confusion and the evils which the progress of this false religion has caused in this kingdom, than entirely to revoke the said Edict of Nantes." Now, he didn't want people to practice a false religion. It wasn't just a symbol of his power. He really just didn't want his subjects to conform to a religion that he thought was evil. And though he is aligning himself with the Catholic Church, he is not saying that he would bow down to the Pope. He wouldn't listen to the Pope if the Pope tried to tell him how to run France. He was still the king. He was still the absolute ruler, given divine power by God to rule over France. So, you might be thinking, how did he accomplish all of this? How was this all possible? How did his nobles listen to him and not really have a say? How did they allow him to basically be an absolute ruler? So, he did this in 1660, he began moving his government from Paris to a town called Versailles, where his father's old hunting lodge would become the new government center. So it began as a really small hunting lodge, not very large, but he would make this his project to become the greatest palace Europe has ever seen, basically, shown by a little carriage arrow moving from Paris to Versailles. So, it became a spectacular palace that showed off wealth and opulence of France. It housed more than 15,000 people, including servants and workers. It was around 20,000, just 20 years later after he began renovating it. His nobles attended court here and attended to the king and queen, or cared for their children, legitimate or not. So, yes. This is how grand just the entrance of Versailles became. This golden gate, well, originally it was all solid gold, but it was torn down in the French Revolution, and it took $8 million to replace. It is just steel now, but it is covered in 100% or 14-karat gold leafing, which is just the entrance to Versailles. So imagine how extravagant the inside and the rest of this palace is. And on the left, you can see all of the gardens. That's the entire land and area of Versailles. So let's start by talking with some of his particular rooms in Versailles. So this is his chambers. This is the best picture. This is from back then. So obviously this is not how Versailles looks now on the left. But his bedchambers were originally on the two wings. It was his chamber on the right wing, and then the left wing would be the queen's. But he thought that it was only, I guess, necessary that he would move his chambers to the center, as he was the Sun King and the center of everybody's life back then. So, people would fight over which tasks they would get to help him with. So in selling his noble titles, again, the hierarchy was made. Many people competed to hand him his nightshirt, or to help him go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or to wake him up, or give him food. That is what he distracted his nobles with. Instead of dealing with government matters, they dealt with him. Further, the Hall of Mirrors is probably the most well-known room in Versailles. And now this highlights the political successes of King Louis. His diplomatic achievements are shown through paintings in the ceiling, as he's depicted as a god again. This is from a battle that he won during his reign, and all the rest of the paintings have to deal with him, or Greek gods in their victories over evil, basically. In the room, you can see to the right are windows, and to the left, he wanted to show his up-and-coming mirror manufacturing in France to compete the Venetian mirror manufacturer at the time. At the time, mirrors were very, very expensive, even to have just a little one just to like put on your makeup for the women. So these are grand scale floor-to-ceiling mirrors, which just exude opulence and luxury and basically his wealth. But he also wanted the mirrors because they reflect the sunlight. Again, just to remind you, if you hadn't already forgotten, that he is the powerful one in France, just to remind you of his power. So there are 357 mirrors in this room, all equaling, I think, 7 floor-to-ceiling mirrors that, again, mirror the windows that look outside. And you can just see through the gilded bronze all throughout the room, as well as the chandeliers, again, just showing wealth. So the mirrors on the right look out to the gardens, which is the next thing that we are talking about. So you can see how grand his gardens and fountains and his Grand Canal is. So his canal, he actually made men divert water from the Seine River, I'm probably mispronouncing that, that is located in Paris, and he made them irrigate the water to Versailles to create his own lakes and ponds and fountains. Near his ponds is actually where he would house his mistresses. He was very well known for cheating on his wife, which is not the best, but just shows his power, and no one questioned him. So in his canals, he would have boats. Basically, they're actually like man-made lakes, so you could do whatever in them. And right before the Grand Canal is one of the most well-known of his fountains, which is the Fountain of Apollo. Again, if you haven't already made this connection, he loves Apollo, and that's his emblem, as he is the sun god, and Apollo is the god of the sun. So this is Apollo, or Louis, however you want to interpret it. He's rising from the sea at daybreak, surrounded by tritons. It's just very grand, and again, exudes his power. So today we have talked about King Louis, how he made one king, one law, one faith, and showed all of that through his grand palace. Now these are just some of the rooms that exude this, but I would like you all to go ahead and go on to the virtual tour of Versailles and see it for yourself and tell me which one you like. Thank you.